Let's come before our Lord God in prayer. Father God, we ask that you would tune our hearts and minds to hear your Holy Spirit speaking to us through my poor words. We ask that you would anoint what is said here. I ask for the gift of preaching this morning, that I may deliver your word and thoughts about it. We ask that you would give your people ears to hear and to obey. We ask it in the strong name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, there's a story about this very untalkative, non-loquacious farmer. And he had a mule. And he and his wife were traveling. And the mule, she was riding on a horse. You know, probably the filly that won the Preakness yesterday. And he was riding on his mule, and the mule stumbled. He almost fell off. And he said to the mule, "That's one." And so they kept going, and they came to a tree, and the mule almost ran him into a tree. And he said to the mule, "That's two." And then the mule came to a stream and bent down to drink, and the guy almost fell off. And he said, "That's three." And he took out his shotgun and shot the mule and killed it. That's why he said, "What did you do that for?" And he said, "That's one." I mean, you know, it was a great story because it relates to marriage math. You know, that's one. Okay. 1 plus 1 equals 1. 1 plus 1 equals 2. And 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals infinity. Those are the three marriage math problems. You might want to use the back of your insert to take some notes. I assume something will be worth saying because I've stolen enough stuff from somebody else that is really wonderful. But you might want to just write down those three math equations as we get to them. In Genesis 2:18 it said, "It is not good for the man," and I said, for anyone, "to be alone." Now, solitude is good. We all need solitude. My wife and I especially need solitude. When we're with people who talk a lot, talk too much, you know, it's too noisy, whatever, we need to get alone for ourselves and also to be with God. Solitude is good. But loneliness, or 100% aloneness, is not good. That's what the Bible says. It's not good for a man or anyone to be alone. 12-step programs are usually designed to get people out of addictions, out of themselves, out of their inward focus. The reason they probably got into an addiction is because they focused inward. They focused on themselves. They never learned, you know, how to develop intimacy with God and other people. We need others for many reasons. Companionship, accountability, assistance, completeness, among others. Companionship. Psychological studies have shown that people don't live as long if they're by themselves. And dare I say, they don't live as long if they're not married. I mean, it's an amazing kind of thing. People don't live as long, or they don't stay as mentally well, as mentally stable if they're living by themselves. Accountability. We have individual and corporate accountability. Under individual accountability, I have my wife being the only one that knows the password to get on the internet. I want that accountability so that I don't mess up and do something on the internet that I shouldn't do. So that's accountability. We can have that in various ways. And then there's corporate accountability. We had some extended relatives in Maine, where my wife's family is from, and they used to meet together, just their own little group of 4 or 5, and they began to get off into, I wouldn't call it heresy, but they began to get off into extreme kind of things about the Christian faith. So we need accountability to keep us honest, sharp, and biblical. Assistance. It takes 2 people to do certain projects. We have a cat who has, what is the name of that thing? Flea allergic dermatitis. Okay? If even one flea gets on this cat and bites this cat, she starts scratching herself, biting herself, and it comes into scabs. And it's awful. Our other cat is this big, hairy, furry cat that you can't even hardly get down to her skin level to put the medication on. So when we buy this Frontline stuff, which is, if any of you have cats and dogs know, supposed to be the best stuff. Yeah, it's about $12 or $13 a shot to put it on the cat. And if you don't get it down to the skin line, it doesn't work. And me being very cheap, I want to make sure it works. I want to get it down to the skin. So I even bought a razor. We even bought an electric shaver to shave the cats behind their neck so we could get it down to the skin line. It definitely takes two of us to hold the cat, shave the cat, and get the front line on. So sometimes it takes two people. It's not good to be alone trying to do that project, or you can wind up with scratches all over you. I have seen people put up a 4x8 sheet of drywall on an angle or on a ceiling, but I don't think I'd want to try to do it myself. I did that in the manse at the Forks of the Brandywine when we created the train room for my model railroad, and I had a friend come in, and because it was on an angle, you know, I knew I couldn't do it, and he almost did one himself, and I said, I don't know how people do this, but actually the trick is people who are not in construction, they have these tools that hold the thing up there, you know, and then the guy goes around and nails it on. Ah, sneaky little trick there. Completeness. We need others for companionship, accountability, assistance, completeness. There's a phrase called yin-yang, where they're like two apostrophes that, you know, come together and make a whole. Usually, we marry somebody that completes us. You know, that old opposites attract. I mean, my wife is great at being the caregiver. I don't think I mentioned last week, my mother had a very serious auto accident, April 29th. She was 2 days in the hospital. They wouldn't release her home unless we would come there and be there the next 2 days and have somebody there for the next 2 weeks. So my wife has been caregiver for my mother, and my mother wrote her a wonderful note saying, "You are the most wonderful person, caregiving and all that. I grew up in the home. I got all the baggage. Ain't no way that I'm going to be able to do it that well. It ain't my spiritual gift either. But my wife is wonderful at being caregiving and being the nurturing person and being the baby person to take care of our kids when they were little." On the other hand, if you want to go somewhere and, you know, it's a map and directions and whatever, don't ask my wife. Don't follow her. You know, I'm the one that does the directions. So we need other people to complete us, to make a whole. Somebody has said if two people are exactly the same, one of them is useless or unnecessary. By the way, I have 2 throat lozenges today, so you don't have to worry about whether I go over 20 minutes or not. Okay, here's the 3 math equations that flesh out some great principles about marriage and even relationships in general, because we're not all married, so we try to appeal to everyone here in this message. All right, 1 plus 1 equals 1. That's what we did with the kids in the children's message. 1 plus 1 equals 1. Genesis 2:24 says, "A man shall leave his father and mother and be united to his wife." Now, what's the old King James word? Let's see who knows. What's the old King James word? A man shall what to his wife? Cleave. Okay. You know, I never liked that word. It always reminded me of a meat cleave. Not the idea you want to have here. So, the Hebrew word cleave, or translated cleave in the King James, means to stick. Like things glued together, like the blue and orange paper. To be closely joined. So a man leaves his father and mother, cleaves to his wife, is closely joined, sticking together like glue to his wife. And they make one flesh. Now, in marriage, it's supposed to be one life. It's not supposed to be 2 people, each doing their own thing. And it's not supposed to be like parallel play with kids. You ever watch little kids play? You know, they don't really play together, and if one of them really wants the toy the other one has, you're in trouble. But, you know, they kind of play together, but they're each playing with their own stuff. It's called parallel play. How many people have heard of Larry Burkett? Larry Burkett, Christian financial person. Larry Burkett, when I used to do premarital counseling, I would show a Larry Burkett video for half an hour to each couple. And Larry Burkett used to say this great line. Okay, when you get married, you need to have one bank account. Only one bank account. Now, true, if you have one account, you can have one mess. But if you got 2 bank accounts, you got 2 messes, okay? One bank account. We're one life in Christ. It's not, you know, my money and his money or her money and all that kind of stuff.